Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I am your host, the Football Grump, and with me as always is Mike the Cranky Fan.
Hey, what's going on, Grump? It is my once a month bad cold period where I'm sick again, but we'll power through this. Last time we talked to everybody, the Lightning had beaten the Rangers and are now in the Stanley Cup Finals, and I'd be gloating a lot more, but your Yankees just whacked my Rays pretty badly, and we look like complete dog shit. So let's just call it even, everybody, and move on our merry ways. I won't say anything else if you guys don't say anything. So
Yeah, well, the New Jersey Generals are moving into the playoffs, so I'm feeling pretty good. They went 9-1 in the regular season, and they will be playing their long-standing rivals, the Philadelphia Stars.
Oh, it's
in that divisional matchup.
Herschel Walker versus Kelvin Bryant. Huh?
Yeah, and then hopefully moving into the championship the week after that, which I think is like 4th of July. We're going to start this one off with some news. So Giants linebacker Justin Hilliard has tested positive for a banned substance. It's a diuretic. He claims it was his partner's medication he took by mistake. He will serve a 2-game suspension. I will serve 2 minutes of having thought about this.
People are making their own decisions about the COVID tests and everything and vaccinations. These guys are accidentally taking their partner's illegal medication. Okay.
I mean, it's a diuretic. There's a million reasons why someone could be prescribed a diuretic. I think it's a legitimate excuse. I also think he's lying.
It's bullshit.
Yeah, I think it's a completely legit thing for his partner to have a diuretic. It's not.
Oh yeah, sure.
But yeah, I don't think he took his partner's medication by mistake.
They don't know exactly what's going in their body is bullshit.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
In other news, TJ Brunson was waived. TJ Brunson is an inside linebacker. He was a Giants 2020 7th-round pick from South Carolina. He never quite caught on. I never quite knew what they saw in him, but it's a 7th-round pick, so whatever. He was waived.
A 7th-round pick who lasted on the roster for 2 years is not the worst thing in the world.
No, not at all, but it's just in general. It's a 7th-round pick. You take a flyer on him.
Yep, new regime,
yeah,
new personnel. You move on.
Never really deserved any sort of playing time, so whatever. But they did, in his place, sign Keelan Doss. Keelan Doss is a 2019 undrafted free agent who was signed originally by the Raiders. He has bounced around the league. He is from UC Davis. Most notably, he is a 6'3" wide receiver, so big body guy. That's interesting because we just continue to throw bodies at the wide receiver spot. And I wonder how much of that is due to injuries. I wonder how much of that is due to what they want to do at the position. And I wonder how much of that is due to Darius Slayton.
I don't know.
Yeah. Darius Slayton is going to be probably a topic this offseason.
He's very polarizing because you know my thoughts on Darius Slayton. Yep. I've never been a big fan. I feel we've upgraded the position. So, yeah, I'd be very curious if he's on the roster when the season starts.
So, Giants minicamp concluded. It was a 3-day minicamp, June 7th, 8th, and 9th, I believe, with the 3rd day canceled. Brian Daboll canceled the final day and replaced it instead with like a team-building barbecue activity or something like that. Important to note that because Brian Daboll is a first-year head coach, the Giants were allowed to get on the field earlier and for longer than other teams. So this final day of minicamp where...
Probably was planned anyway.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those things, and they had already had good attendance going all the way through their voluntary workouts through the mandatory minicamp. So really, what's the point? And speaking to what's the point, we're going to go through just some observations that beat writers had, but there's not going to be a whole lot we can glean from this, partly because it's minicamp, partly because it was only 2 of 3 days, and mostly because there were nearly 15 guys in non-contact red jerseys doing varying levels of work, most of which does not allow us to see a first team, what we expect to be the first team in August in training camp, doing much of anything. So there's a hodgepodge, everything all over the place. So going forward, while we talk about minicamp, that is something to keep in mind.
And we said that in our last episode before the, our War Room episode, that we weren't overly concerned about anybody with a red jersey. There's different reasons. Not our concern what's going on in June for that.
Yeah, no, not at all. And it's important to note you might see that there's, let's just say there's 25 guys in red jerseys. They're all doing varying levels of work, some of which, if it weren't June, would not be in a red jersey. If it were August, they might be, in a red jersey but still participating and just not allowed to be hit. Whatever, or if it were October, they would just be practicing in a either limited capacity or fully because they have a game coming up, and it's just that's the nature of their injury. Right. So there were guys doing things, there were other guys that weren't. So like Andrew Thomas is recovering from surgery, he's having a lot of trouble running and putting a ton of weight, and probably shouldn't be doing that right now. Other guys like Kenny Golladay are in a red jersey as a precautionary measure, and they're on the side running through drills, catching balls, running around. If they had to play, if there was a game Sunday, I would think people like Kenny Golladay would be playing.
I would think so for sure.
So it's important to keep all that in mind. All of these guys sat, so what we're able to see and observe from practice or whatever is fairly limited, but that doesn't mean that all of these guys are seriously hurt or are unable to participate in any capacity and are behind the eight ball or anything like that. If they were seriously
hurt, they wouldn't even be in red jerseys. They would just be probably not even there or just doing something extremely light. So
yeah, and
that's kind of sending that they're out there at least in red jerseys.
Yeah, I think the guys that I'm probably the most concerned. So I'm gonna list the most notable guys that were in red jerseys, and you tell me who you think most concerns you.
Okay.
From this list. So we have Kadarius Toney, Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Blake Martinez, Kayvon Thibodeau, Rodarius Williams, Aaron Robinson, Andrew Thomas, Darnay Holmes.
Well, I mean, Andrew Thomas would scare me the most, but I think they're giving him ultra protection, so I'm not overly concerned. But if there was one of those guys that I knew would be ready for day one in September, it would be him.
Yeah, and that's mine too. Everybody. I have serious concerns about three guys in the secondary at corner being in red jerseys, but I'm pretty sure all three of them are probably fairly okay. Rodarius Williams is recovering from ACL surgery, but that happened so early in the year last year, and he's also a little further on the depth chart. Andrew Thomas, for me, is such a bedrock for this team, and he is somebody that could torpedo the season if he's down. And he is the one who's recovering. He's the one who's really not doing work right now. So if I had to pick somebody to be him, other than that, I'm not really all that concerned about these guys in red jerseys. Most of them are pretty fine. Most of them are dealing with little nicks and bruises or, just general rest and recovery, or are a bit buried in the depth chart, and therefore I'm not that worried for that reason.
Yeah. Again, being in June, not as concerned, but really for anybody. But let me ask you something, though. Let's say worst case scenario, Andrew Thomas isn't ready to go on week one. What do you do at left tackle? Do you slide Evan Neal over right away, or do you Band-Aid it for a week or two?
Right. Well, I mean, it's June right now, so...
I'm just saying, forget even the red jersey now. Let's say in the first preseason game, Andrew Thomas goes down for 2 weeks, and he's out. He won't be in the opener. Would you keep Evan Neal just at right tackle all the time and just develop him there and just, Band-Aid it on the left side, or do you move him over, to...
He's missing one game, the opening game.
Let's say two.
He's missing 2 games. I'm keeping Evan Neal at right tackle, and I'm game planning around not having my starter at left tackle. I'm not going to wreck my rookie who is just barely getting a handle on the playbook and move him to the left side. Now, if the question is, going forward, let's just say either week 17 or, next year, what's my plan at backup left tackle? It's probably Evan Neal. But
right.
But week 1, week 2, not fucking with that.
Right.
I'm letting Evan Neal be a very good right tackle before I do anything with him at left tackle.
Or any time of the year. If it's weeks 9 and 10, he's out. I'd do the same thing.
Yeah, I think it would be different if Andrew Thomas were down for the year.
Well, that's me my next question.
Yeah, then I'm probably, this is the time where I'm making that decision based on what I saw in June, and since I'm not a coach, I don't know. But if he picked up the playbook really well, he really looks like whatever, then, that's probably we should probably cross-train him at left tackle throughout the year, a little bit at a time, just in case whatever, because I think that's probably the plan. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to let him develop into being a very good right tackle before I make him anything at left tackle.
And these are questions, again, they're not based on anything I see with a red jersey. These are just general,
right?
What would you do scenarios.
And it's a legit thing. I mean, they have to figure out that swing tackle thing.
Yes.
A lot of people thought that Matt Gano was going to be that person, and Matt Gano honestly shouldn't be any person. The fact that he's the first tackle off the bench is already a bad.
I mean, you have to learn how to crawl before you can walk, and we got to get starters before we're worrying about depth on this offensive line.
Yeah, that's pretty much that. So some key notes from the offense. Let's start with Daniel Jones. This coaching staff is focused on putting him in the best position to be effective. So, we've said, people have said ad nauseum about all the times that Jones speaks with Mike Kafka and Brian Dable about the plays that he likes, and they go over that stuff and they work on stuff together. So that's that. But based on what has been observed in practice, they have been mixing in lots and lots and lots of running, along with a lot of motion and movement to get the ball to guys in space. And often that's going to be in a quick game scenario somewhere around 3 yards ahead of the line of scrimmage to behind the line of scrimmage. There's a lot of stuff that they do in Buffalo. It's a lot of stuff that they also do in Kansas City, where Kafka is from. So, and
stuff they did at Duke.
Yeah, honestly, it's not like this is a huge part of Daniel Jones's game or anything like that, but this is the huge part of a game where you just have playmakers and you're going to let them make plays, and you don't necessarily have a structured offense. Like this is kind of a good thing to do when you are rebuilding, is kind of make this shit your staple and then work around that. And that's what we've been seeing. The deep shots are going to be mixed in with those things. They're going to try and get the ball in space and get people moving forward.
Something, until we see an offensive line that can pass protect long enough, and until we can start seeing receivers who can get separation on a routine basis, that's just not going to be a standard part of our offense that you play. It's just not, until they prove themselves. That's going to take time, for these guys to, get the reps and install this offense and everything. So I think this is a smart way to start.
Absolutely, yeah. The other thing we've been seeing is that Saquon Barkley has been a major focal point of the offense so far. He has stated publicly, I guess, at the podium, that he feels a lot more confident than he had been last year. He did not feel very confident at all coming off of the injury, and I guess probably just with the offensive line that he was dealing with. And just the fact that he was not very effective thus far in his career. But this coaching staff is moving him all over the formation. He's been on the field with other running backs at the same time. He's been in the slot, moving around in motion. And he also appears to be back to closer to form.
Let's be honest. I mean, everybody's quick to bag on him and everything and kind of write him off, assuming we're going to trade him, but he's the best offensive player on this team. He's the best weapon. And this coaching staff, they're evaluating what they have. They're learning their personnel as much as they are installing what their game plans are. Their schemes and their plans, and they see what this guy can do. I mean, forget the talk of contracts and re-signing and trading and all that nonsense. Just Saquon Barkley, the player. He's a year removed from that injury. He's talking the right things about how he has more confidence. I mean, before he was hurt, he was the best offensive player on this team, and I certainly think he's the best weapon this team has. So they are going to make him the linchpin of this offense. They're probably going to get the ball in his ways that we didn't think of in the prior coaching, staffs. So that doesn't surprise me at all. They should be doing that. And if they move on from during the year, don't re-sign him, we'll figure it out then. But for right now, he's the best.
So look, I'm not going to go into the all of the points that you could make against drafting a running back at number 2, but if you are going to justify that, your justification is that Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey the same way is not a running back. He is an offensive weapon. Now, if I have a big criticism, beyond just drafting Barkley where you draft him, it's if you're going to draft that player, use him to his fullest extent. Now, Pat Shurmur did like to use Barkley a lot, but Joe Judge's and Jason Garrett's approach to this whole offense was very neutered. And Saquon Barkley was no exception to that. We didn't see Barkley featured in a lot of ways that put him in the best position. I mean, they did try to make him a focal point.
Last year was a lot of extenuating circumstances.
But I'm not even talking about last year. I mean, even the beginning of the prior year before he got hurt. It just... He wasn't put in motion a whole lot. You know, if he was doing anything, it was just, you know, lined up in the slot and then motion back into the backfield. Very, very basic things. Mm-hmm. He wasn't in motion at the snap. You know, he wasn't used very much as a distraction. It was very deliberate when he was used. And I'm not going to... What I'm saying is not necessarily to bag on the prior coaching staff, but this is just in general, neither coaching staff used Saquon Barkley to his fullest extent, which is this. It's moving him everywhere. It's not the fact that he's on the field and another running back on the field alone. It doesn't even matter what he's doing. It's right there. You have no idea what he's doing. You have no idea what the offense is planning when you have two running backs and Barkley's in the slot, and then he can motion into the backfield, motion that guy. I mean, it creates so much extra confusion. None of that shit was done by either coaching staff beforehand. And it was Freddie Kitchens, Jason Garrett, Joe Judge, Pat Shurmur, none of them.
Let's go back to last year for a little bit, just from your eyes. On a scale of 1 to 10, how far physically do you think he was back?
It doesn't. That doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. I'm not making a point.
No, because the point doesn't matter because they didn't do it in 2020 when he was back.
Yeah, but how many games did he play before he got hurt?
Who gives a shit? The sample size is the sample size. In all 3 games or 4 games, they did not, in any capacity, run any plays.
I'm talking about last year.
Okay.
Right. How much do you think he was back? 70%?
Physically?
Yeah.
I think that he was probably 75% before the ankle injury. I think when he came back physically, I think he was probably 70 to 75% when he came back from that. But mentally, he was shot because A, the season was shot, and B, he had lost his confidence. C, he knew the offensive line was a total shit show.
And I'm probably picking nits here about this, but I just don't think those coaching staffs had confidence in him that he was back. And I think they were trying to protect him. I think they looked at last year as just kind of like he'll be back in 20. I mean, remember, this coaching staff did not think they were going to be fired in November. And I think they were thinking of a longer plan for him of like, we'll get him back and we'll gradually get him back into this offense so he can feel comfortable, get mentally, in his head so he can play. So for 2022, he's the old Saquon, and now we'll do our things.
So your plan for giving a guy confidence is to have him run between the tackles?
I am also not Joe Judge.
That's what I think that theory falls apart.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Judge, I think did not do a good job as being a head coach.
What I'm saying,
that's what I think they were trying to do.
That very well may be the case that was their intent, but my point isn't really what their intent was. My point is that no coaching staff that Barkley had in the NFL has used him to his fullest extent. And that includes just simple things like him as a distraction. So
let me ask you, looking at the tape back when he was at Penn State, did they do that more with him?
Not necessarily.
So that's 3 coaching staffs that have it. So
yeah, but that's a little irrelevant because I'm just talking about the justification for drafting him, high, making him a priority, getting a guy like that and bringing him into the NFL. The college level just functions a little differently, and there's unlimited amounts of 5-star recruits you can recruit. So it really doesn't. I mean, you're correct, but I don't think he needed any creativity at the college level to be super effective.
I think it comes down to a general manager that had old school ways of thinking and also was attracted either by himself or by ownership of having a face of the franchise, and that's why they drafted him.
You're 100% right.
But
what I'm saying is that you can justify getting a Christian McCaffrey or a Saquon Barkley at a later time in the draft, but you can justify it by using him more than just as a running back. Because they are effective in ways that and not even traditional running backs, just 99% of running backs are not effective the way that those 2 guys are. So you're supposed to exploit those things that make them special, not eliminate them.
Well, the good thing now is, nobody in this building has any ties to that pick.
That's correct.
They could use him however they want now, and there's no justification even needed. Now it's just here's my asset. Here's a guy that can do all these things. He's a unique talent. It's going to be on them. But again, if we're still seeing the things that are not being done, like you're talking about. Then it's like, well, it's 3 coaching staffs it hasn't, and maybe that's just not him.
Yeah, but okay. So to bring this full circle, this is what we are seeing: is that Barkley is one of the main focal points in the offense thus far that we've seen in OTAs and minicamp. They are moving him everywhere. They're making him the center, and he looks electric. Is
That's
what
great.
we've heard from 3 different beat writers. So that's good. The other thing that's really interesting is Daniel Bellinger, a mid-round draft pick at tight end, has been getting all of the first team reps over Atkins and Seals-Jones. Brian Daboll has stressed that it's a rep chart, not a depth chart.
Yeah.
I somewhat believe that. Okay, I do believe that on game day, Brian Daboll is going to put the best depth set. He's going to have the best players on the depth chart in that order. But I also believe that they are currently giving reps to the people that they want to be at the top of the depth chart.
Sure, of course.
So I don't think that Brian Daboll is full of shit when he says that, but I do think that it's not completely unrelated to the depth chart. I think they're trying to get the depth chart set the way that they think. They're trying to get a head start to get Bellinger at the top where they think he belongs,
And
because
all
they know
three-
Seals-Jones is not a tight end 1.
And all 3 of those guys are guys that they brought in. They didn't inherit any of those guys, right?
You are absolutely correct. In fact, they got rid of the few guys that were still
Right.
here.
You remember we did our how do we get to,
40 million or whatever.
how do we get to 40 million? And we're like, well, there's no tight ends.
yes. That is.
That was a real short episode.
So that's good news, and that is a mid-round draft pick that is being not handed a position, but they're
Turning
really
some heads.
yeah, apparently, and per reports he appears to be fitting right in. I guess in some regards standing out, but again, remember, standing out is against some red jerseys, so you have guys going up against not legitimate first starters. You know what I mean? So if you're hearing that Daniel Jones would have been sacked around the blind side, that's not Andrew Thomas we're talking about. So keep that in mind. Flipping. I guess just one minor note. Wan'Dale Robinson, since people are very curious about him, the 2nd-round pick. He is a rookie, so he worked mostly with the second team and with Tyrod Taylor as he gets accustomed to an NFL playbook, which, remember, he came from Kentucky, and before that, what was it, Nebraska?
Well, think about it. Let's be realistic. If you're thinking of the rep chart or the depth chart, right now he's probably at best number 4, right? So
well, before you do that, consider the red jerseys here. Tony, KG, and Shep are all red jerseys.
So yeah, that's a good point.
So he is behind CJ Board right now, and he is behind, I think Darius Slayton.
But that may be a situation, going back to the tight ends, where he's not going to be relied on to be as significant.
But that's the thing, So I just listed 3 guys on the that are wearing red jerseys that are probably ahead of him on the depth chart. I can't list anybody above that should be ahead of Bellinger. I can't list one. So that they're different. That's a different comparison.
Exactly.
But for Giants fans, Wan'Dale Robinson, he's learning the playbook. Chill out. You'll see him in training camp. You'll see him in preseason. You'll see what he can do.
He's going to be a lightning rod for Giants Twitter all year.
He is. And that's what happens. Cordell Flott probably too. And speaking of Cordell Flott, I'm going to flip to the defense really quick, and there's not much to talk about because remember, helmets and shorts. So there's that. For starters, Azeez Ojulari, we mentioned this before, but I think it's really important to mention it again because he did have a very good rookie year, despite the pass rush not being good. He looked pretty good, and one thing that we highlighted is that he was really young last year. I think he was only 20 years old. So what we said was he may not have a big year, but consider that he is still growing, and growing he is, as he showed up this year with 10 pounds more of muscle. So now we're expecting a bigger leap from him as he's older. He's not just a young kid anymore. He's a little bit bigger. He's stronger. He's got a whole year under his belt. He's in a more aggressive defense, and he has Kayvon Thibodeau on the other side. I'm expecting some really big things from Azeez Ojulari, so he's one of those guys that I'm going to keep my eyes on.
He got a couple of votes, and we went around the room and said, "Who's the guy you're expecting, big things from?"
Yeah. I don't know. You got any thoughts on the pass rush there, just from a personnel standpoint?
I think he's gonna have a breakout year. to be very honest. I think he's the guy. I mean, I don't want to make this direct comparison, so don't freak out everybody. But back in the day, Carl Banks was one of those guys where John Madden would say, "You know, who doesn't get any of the credit because LT is always there, Carl Banks." And again, I'm not comparing these two guys to LT and Carl Banks, but he could be a guy that's gonna, get benefit off just improved talent all around him to be a guy that's a real significant force. So, I could see Azeez Ojulari knocking on the door for potentially Pro Bowl consideration in the year. That's my bold prediction for the defense.
Fuck yeah, man. I'm all for that. A
Yeah.
Pro Bowl pass rusher from a Giants team seems like something that happens
And
all the
not being-
times, but
and
it's
not
been a
being-
while.
How about that?
What was that?
And not being Thibodeau.
Yeah. I think that's kind of likely, but I mean, it's going to depend on how they line up. Which brings us to Wink Martindale. One of the things was John Feliciano. This was kind of like a soundbite. He was talking about how Wink came out with some Wink stuff in minicamp, and that is tons and tons and tons of different looks. This defense relies a lot on communication for their exotic and creative looks and disguises. Everything is designed to create confusion all over the place and allow a couple extra seconds of the quarterback in the pocket while he diagnoses what's going on post snap. Allow linemen to get confused on assignments, things like that. And when they do that, what they do is all of that is designed to create pressure in creative ways. So we'll see things like defensive linemen dropping into coverage. Things that were mentioned were safeties like Julian Love were lined up right over the center. Blitzes coming from the second level is going to be a big thing, particularly from the slot. I think you'll see things like Dane Belton is probably going to be someone that you'll see in nickel and dime situations come in on a blitz. Guys like Darnay Holmes I could see making a carve out on this roster based in nickel and dime packages. Even though he's not a big man cover guy, I do like him in underneath stuff, and I actually like him blitzing and creating pressure. So this is going to be a little chaotic, and my hope here is that. Well, I mean, so you're a Gator guy.
Yeah. I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Go ahead. Why don't you just talk? Do you have? What are your overall thoughts of Wink Martindale defense? Everything I just said. Do you have concerns? Are you worried? Just go ahead. Give me your whole spiel on it.
I have some concerns, and again, I am coming off the Todd Grantham defense of Florida for the last 3 years, where he came in with the exact same thing, where tons and tons and tons of pressure, blitzing all the time from every which way, every angle, all the time. Communication is absolutely essential and key, because if the communication is not there and the guy's not in the right place, there's going to be guys running free all over. And when I hear a guy with a resume like that and what he wants to do, coming to a young defense with key pieces that are missing, potential of secondary that's going to need help, I get a little nervous. So I'm curious to see how much of the playbook is installed right away and how much they're going to grow into it, as opposed to, here it is, this is the Wink Martindale defense, and I'm going to throw you in the ocean and you might sink or you might swim. So I am a little, it might be a year one thing of me of nerves. I think Martindale has a better track record than Todd Grantham as the, when he blitzed, because Grantham was just like, fuck it, I'm blitzing every play just about. And, having two corners come in from way out there, they never have any chance of getting to the quarterback. But I think it might be a little bit of a rocky road early, and I hope the fan base doesn't turn on him immediately as a scapegoat for things that this defense is going to have to grow into him.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I have some year one concerns. As a general philosophy, I love this kind of stuff. I mean, I do. I like creative blitzes. I think the league has shifted rules in the favor of offense, but defenses, they neuter themselves by not doing stuff like this.
Right.
And I think this kind of stuff is a gamble, but it's so much fun, and it often yields results even if it's not. It can be effective even if it's not effective the way it's designed, if that makes any sense. Just because you create so much confusion, you might get a quarterback doing something dumb. And it's just that simple. Even if the guy didn't get home, he didn't create any pressure. It just wasn't what the quarterback was expecting, and he just threw it completely in the wrong direction. So I do really like stuff like this, but this to me sounds like it relies on a lot of veteran leadership, a lot of high IQ stuff, and this is a year one thing where, Blake Martinez is probably great for this, and that I feel okay with that. I think
it makes you wonder why they got rid of Logan Ryan.
So that is a fair point. I mean, there's a million reasons why I wonder why they got rid of Logan Ryan. But that's a fair point. I think Xavier McKinney can grow into it, but remember, he's still very young with only like 1 1/3 NFL seasons under his belt. And up front, Leonard Williams, I think he can communicate some of that. But again, it's not, and probably Dexter Lawrence too, but there's not a ton of experience here, and there's certainly not a ton at corner. Adoree Jackson's been in the league for a little while now, but he's not really on the field for a full season, like virtually ever. So the fact
that
he's
a lot of eye communication as much as verbal, pre-snap and post-snap with these guys, and
it also it requires a lot of leadership. I think off the field, I think it requires a lot of these self-motivated meetings between DBs, you know what I mean, and we hear stories in 2011 about how the defense turned shit around, and Antrell Roll and Deion Grant started their own DB thing, and they would text each other quizzes basically, like, if they come out like this, what are you supposed to do? And that was all them being them, and they also approached Perry Fewell and they were like, we need to get the communication sleeker because this is where we're screwing up. So that's all veteran accountability from guys like Corey Webster, Antrell Roll, and Deion Grant, guys who had been in the league for a really long time, guys who had won Super Bowls, been to the playoffs. We don't have that shit anymore.
No.
There's nothing like that.
And to answer your original question, I think is, I expect a modified version of this defense in year one. I don't think he's going to throw the kitchen sink at them all and have everybody thinking too much, because there's a lot of thinking involved in defenses like this. And, I think having all of these OTAs in this offseason and training camp, he'll get a good assessment of what can be absorbed by this roster right now, what they can do and what they can't do. So it's still a work in process. But, again, I'm going to be a little nervous this year until I see it on the field, the breakdowns, the miscommunications, the easy touchdowns. They're just like, well, where was anybody? And we'll see if that is minimized or eliminated as the season goes on.
Well, I'll say it like this. I'll be on my toes for those things, but I'm not going to be nervous because I'm not really expecting anything, especially from, a coverage standpoint on defense this year. My expectations are so low this year. I'm not really going to be super disappointed if we lose a game because of a busted cover. I mean, in the moment I'll be pissed, but I'm not going to be like, this fucking wink defense and blah, blah. It's just going to be like, well, we suck. What are you going to do?
I can guarantee you, after talking about the draft picks is the big focal point of Giant Twitter.
Yeah.
Wink's defense will be my second guess will be, Giants will get on his case sooner than anything on the offense. I think they'll be on his case more than Daniel Jones even.
Yeah, I suspect that he's going to be a big offseason topic next year. There's going to be a big argument as to whether or not we need a new defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. But so here's the thing. I mentioned veteran leadership. I'm a big fan of paying corners now because I just think that it's so hard to predict corners in the draft and whatever. Getting a known quantity and paying I like paying money for known quantities. I don't like throwing money at guesses, and I don't really like throwing money at depth either. But if I am going to throw money, it's going to be at corner. And so, we have the space next year. So if Wink Martindale does stick around for another year, I suspect that in his second year, obviously a whole year. But again, you're adding. I suspect that there will be additions on defense in free agency next year, which will add a lot of experience, NFL experience, and veteran leadership that will also help Wink's defense in addition to talent.
I have no expectation he's a one-and-doneer in defensive coordinator. I think you're going to hear noise from the fan base, but I fully expect him to.
But I think the doubts might go away after year two because I suspect that they'll invest at the positions that need it the most, and agreed. I think that everything we just said, right? Like the communication is going to be a part that's not talked about as much. They're going to talk about the talent, and they're going to talk about probably injuries and all that stuff. But really, the veteran leadership, I think, is another part of Wink's defense that makes it work really, really well. And I think that will be an under talked about aspect that fans will turn around on Wink probably. Yep. And I guarantee you he'll probably be gone for a head coaching gig after that second year. That's kind of what I'm expecting, to be honest.
He'll either be a head coach or he'll be fired. So I mean,
yeah, probably.
I mean, the normal expectation for coordinators is only a couple of years. I mean, the days of the Bud Fosters, those are long gone.
Oh yeah. That is pretty much all we got. Like I said, we only got 2 days of minicamp, and most of the OTA stuff we had already went over. So that's pretty much it until August. The Giants players are not going to be around. So this is when you don't want to hear from us. Because if you're hearing from us, it's news. And since we don't have any money, that news is probably going to be bad news.
That's when we start scouring the police blotters. We start looking at we go to the hospitals to look to see who's admitted with injuries, those type of things.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't want to do that.
Yeah, pretty much. So this show will be sporadic here and there with news.
Well, we'll start our pen and magic marker look at the season coming up.
Some light stuff, just some fun stuff here and there. I'm going to probably add some stuff to the YouTube channel that's just me, just little things. I'm going to complete up the draft pick breakdowns that I've been doing. I think I only have like 3 left. One of them is recorded, just not edited. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, since we talked about it, I'm going to go through the all USFL players, the ones that were selected to their whatever. And I'll look at them and see if any of them are NFL worthy. And if they are, then I'll do a short little video on them. Because I can guarantee you that 2 or 3 of them are going to get some level of NFL contract, whether that's a tryout, a practice squad thing. 2 or 3 players, that's my minimum. Like that.
Grump, if I walk around the great state of New Jersey, would I find 9 people who know that the Generals went 9-1?
No, I don't think so. No, but I mean, I think part of that has to do with. I don't want to go down this like USFL road, but
that's the off season.
No, but I mean, like, I think that the regional like hoopla isn't gonna be there until they start playing games in their home areas, which they kind of shelved to just kind of get the league started, and everything is being played in Alabama, and then the playoffs are being handled in Canton, Ohio. Yeah. But like, the regional stuff like that, where like people get excited or whatever, that's not going to happen until they play here, because right now the only people attending games probably are either family members or they reside in Alabama, because I mean tickets are cheap as hell. So
let me ask you a semi-serious question then. You've watched some, apparently. How is the player level and the level of play compared to these other spring startups we've had over the last 5-10 years? And what do you think? Is there any chance that this league will have any sort of niche going forward?
The level of play is overall probably on par with the last 2 leagues, the AAF and the XFL, in terms of player balance. So like, there's a handful of players that have moved on from the AAF and the XFL to have legitimate NFL careers in the last 2 years. Younghoe Ko is one of them, a kicker for the Atlanta Falcons. That running back to, oh my God, I don't remember what team he went to. But Henderson or whatever, he was another one that came out of the league and went in there. There's patches of players like that, but then of course there's just teams that don't have a lot of those guys that impact positions, and they play each other, and it's garbage. But it is the first year, so I think that as a league it is less gimmicky than the other 2 leagues, and it seems a lot more legitimate. The coaching seems legit. It feels like I'm watching probably like college football of like 8 college teams I'd never heard of before. It's kind of like that. As far as its legitimacy and its niche, yeah, I think so. I think that its placement in the year allows a path for players to move on. I think in general, any spring league allows a path for players to move into the NFL.
Well, that's the thing.
At cut down, you think about it, like the Giants are desperately thin at some positions, and they have no money. So they can take a flyer on a guy that has some game tape available and has some game experience. Is still better than practice squad experience in the NFL. At least it's real experience. It's live bullets. You know what I mean?
I guess the thing about it is, what does this league want to do? I mean, do they want to be a feeder league for the NFL? Do they see themselves as a minor league, or do they see themselves as an alternative?
I have no idea what they see themselves as, but they're going to probably stick around for a little bit longer because, like I said, the AAF did have players successfully transition from one league to the next. Their problem was budgeting. This is not going to be an issue of budgeting because they're backed by Fox.
Fox, right?
I think it's Fox. I think it's Fox Sports or NBC.
And they've done some simulcasts with NBC, I believe. So there is
there's money. There is money behind this. This is legitimate. It's being people like Colin Cowherd are talking about it because of this backing. But I mean that's a legitimate national voice in the sports world. There's people who just listen to him talk sports every day, and if he's talking about the USFL, it moves it. That wasn't the case with the AAF.
My guess is if you are just a hardcore, if you're a football grump, and football is 95% of your sports watching diet, I could see there being a niche for it. But for someone like myself, where, the last 2.5 months have been consumed with, the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, baseball, not to mention all the other stuff like, NYCFC, Champions League, all these other things. I mean, it's kind of come in my list 6 out of 5 things. So,
yeah, but see, the NBA playoffs to me are as boring as watching paint dry.
But that's your opinion. But I mean, the numbers are the numbers. I mean,
of course,
it's a very crowded time period in the sports calendar. So, I don't want to.
And if the Knicks are garbage, and let's just say the Lightning is trash next year. I mean, you're still going to watch those teams beforehand, but I don't know. If the Lightning are getting killed and there's nothing else on, would you flip to football? 3 years into the league, let's say?
If I don't have any... See, the thing, and we've had this conversation before, that one of the beauties of sports is you follow it through to the end of the story. The soap opera of a season, the soap opera of continuing seasons, how you follow a team, you love a team, you follow all the intricacies of it. Not only your team, but the teams you have passion the other way of teams you hate. I mean, if I'm not going to flip on, I mean, there's been opportunities, it's not, constantly there's a playoff game on or a baseball game. I've had opportunities. I maybe watched like a series and been like, well, is there something else on? I just don't know.
I mean, you also went to England and just decided to pick a team and decided that it was your favorite and watched it all the way through.
True.
So,
that's fair.
It's entirely up to you to decide to do it. I think in the actual instance in which the Lightning aren't worth following because the season is over, which is not the same as there's no game tonight. You know what I mean? Where you're just legitimately disinterested in hockey for the year. It's just a secondary.
I'm genuinely interested. I mean, I watched a lot of NBA playoffs.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? Like where it's like you're an NFL fan for sure, but the Giants have been out of it since October, so you're kind of watching and you're enjoying, but like you have no real drive to watch it. If again now we're talking 3 years in the future, this league is still hanging around. There are, let's just say, small pockets of fans. I think there's a chance that somebody like you could get sucked into it at least for a little bit.
You know what I think their best chance of success is, and success will define later, but their chance to hang around, if they can get a level of play that's consistent.
Of course, and that just comes with time.
Let me finish. If they get a level of play that's consistent, that people will start gambling on it. Because that's kind of a gap in the season where, we all know that more people watch the Hall of Fame game in basketball and football than they do a Stanley Cup final game because most of them are gambling on it. And I think right now you can't gamble on the USFL because it's a complete crapshoot. Nobody knows who's playing, with histories of anything. It's just there. If they can develop something down the road where, okay, we know Philadelphia is pretty good. We know, the Generals are this. We know the players going in. And people could start gambling on it, and it becomes part of the rotation, that could really help it. And that could help ratings. That could help everything for it. So that might be its kind of saving grace
They're already doing that though. So like I understand what you're saying is that it's not really worth gambling on right now because you have a 9-1 team playing a 1-9 team. That's not worth gambling on
Oh,
because
no, I've been talking about that. It's like,
but what I'm saying, a level of play where like people are making educated guesses based on things that the players they know, tendencies they know with coaches. I get what you're saying. What I'm saying is that the powers that be are already pushing the gambling thing with it.
Yeah,
They've had the gambling lines for who's going to win the year. And things like that. So that's an avenue that they absolutely are going to exploit.
Right.
And again, what you're seeking just needs time. It just needs time for the league to develop.
I'm not saying that the mechanics of it aren't there. I'm talking about the
I'm agreeing with you.
The credibility behind it, or like, because like again, the average Joe Schmo travels from St. Louis to Vegas for the weekend in the fall. He may never bet on a sporting event in his life, but he goes to a casino. He kind of knows if the Patriots are playing the Jaguars. I think the Patriots are going to kill them. I'm going to bet. That same guy goes to Vegas in April. He has no clue. And
of course.
It has to get recognition for that to even kick in.
Yeah, but again, to get to that guy, first they have to get the degenerate gambler guy, and it trickles down from there.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us for today. We will see you in a couple weeks. Stay tuned for the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, etc., and as well YouTube, of course, where we're a lot more active and have other content as well. You can follow me on Twitter at @football_Grump and him at the Cranky Fan for all minor headlines that won't warrant an episode. They will be retweeted and talked about there.
For sure.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Go Giants.
And go Bolts.